you now touched upon something which is related to the attitude, right? So I like to now extend that thought process and in your own experience, what are some of the personality traits that are really essential, right, to be a successful entrepreneur? And again, your own perspective, not necessarily.
Yes, yeah, that small disclaimer stays, right? So I think one thing is attitude, definitely. You have to be confident of yourself. You have to be a good communicator. I think that is kind of, or you have to have someone on your team who is a great communicator. I think that is absolutely critical. I think the third thing is in terms of how you value money, right? You can't value it too much and you can't value it too little. You have to kind of balance that out correctly. Because if you start valuing money too much, then you can't walk away from deals, right? Which is not good. If you don't value it too little, then you don't get the value that you would otherwise have got, right? And as I said, it is all about selling, right? When we got close to $1 billion valuation in BladeLogic, if I had the $1 billion and I had to buy BladeLogic, I would have thought a couple of times, right? But the opportunity and the kind of state that we were in was absolutely right, and it was a combination of the right ingredients in the personality traits of Dave and Vijay, and to a certain extent because I was involved in that in that conversation as well. So I think that how you value money and how you kind of position yourself and not undersell is also very important. So I think how you feel about money is also one of the traits that an entrepreneur definitely needs to think about, and also think about it from an internal perspective. And how do you kind of gauge success? Because from a personality perspective, people have different benchmarks for success, and you have to have the ability to kind of in your mind be ready to change those benchmarks. Because in some if you look at how a company evolves and the lifetime of the company, you don't have to change your ideals, you don't have to change your principles, but you definitely have to change your benchmarks. Right? It's a fundamental truth. I think it happened to everything that I touched. And your benchmarks in terms of whether you want to earn money, whether you want to be a great product, whether you want to be a company with great customers. All of that, all those benchmarks keep changing in the life cycle. And as from a personality perspective, you have to be able to kind of get to terms with that, right? I think the fourth thing is patience and dedication. I think, everybody says that. I'll tell you what it personally means for me, right? Patience is the ability to kind of go without salary for years, right? And not think about it too much, right? Obviously, you have to have the backing and you have to have food on the table. Which, in my opinion, if you have the capability of being an entrepreneur, that's the least of your problems. Food on the table comes. As long as your table is not meant for 100 people and you don't want to, go to 5-star restaurants every day, I think food on the table is easy for anybody, but important, right? But obviously, family, personal life, all of that kind of comes together for you to have that secure feeling that, hey, it's okay if I don't have salaries. Because that kind of makes you take the risk, right? And patience and risk go together, because once you take a risk, kind of getting the returns might take time, right? Might test your patience, but you still have to get to it, which means you have to have that motivation to succeed, right? And if you have to have that motivation to succeed, that has to have a driver which kind of drives you from the inside, right? When I used to work 18 hours a day, and I now work 17 and a half hours and 30 minutes a day today, it is actually that fire that drives me. I can't just sit still, it has to happen. And if you don't have that, I think it's very difficult. I think it's that's kind of a required skill set. That's a required trait. And interestingly, I've seen people actually build it. They didn't have it, but they actually acquired it. So it is an acquired trait. It's not something that is built into your personality, but it's definitely an acquirable trait. The last thing, I think, is to let go. The ability to kind of say, hey, I failed, and move back, right? And every time I've not been able to do that, I've suffered, It's like walking away from a deal, right? One way you're saying, hey, I failed to get that deal, whatever the reasons, right? The same thing is true for a company. You come to a realization, and it's a feeling in the gut which says, hey, this is not going to work out. And you have to have the ability to move back and say, hey, I'm giving this up. Right? And I think that is also equally important, because once you know that you can do it, you don't have to do it, if you know what I mean. Right? So I think those are the things that I've learned from personal experience are extremely, extremely important. Hope it makes sense.
I think one of the significant challenges that entrepreneurs face is, when you're not still reach that level of success, is the societal pressure and everything else around you, right? That
Absolutely.
drives you. I mean, things are stacked against entrepreneurship, right? Your family, your friends, your social circle, you're stacked against it.
Yeah.
So tell us about any challenges that you really faced, and how did you manage those kind of societal pressures?
So I think I've been lucky, basically because I always had a story to tell. Right. So one thing, even when we started Icertis, obviously there was no fear of failure then, because you are at a juncture in life where it's not that big a risk.
Yeah,
right? But even then it was still interesting. First day, of course, as I said, both of us actually went to that 100 square feet office and said, what next? That was scary. But even with Icertis, we said, the first time anybody asks you, what do you guys do? I should have a one-line answer, okay, which seems very interesting and something that you believe in, right? So we said, hey, enterprise solutions for the Microsoft Cloud, great story, one line, okay. That's how the first time I started web systems, I had a one-liner for that. So anytime anybody asked me, hey, what do you do? I had an answer ready. I think the challenge, the societal pressure comes in when you cannot convincingly answer that question quickly. Right? It's just like, how much do you earn? Right? So if you don't have an answer, and if you don't have a good amount to tell him or her, that's a problem, right? So the answer I used to give, and actually Samir, my co-founder in Icertis, actually had the same thing to say so this was like deja vu. We were in a customer meeting, the customer says, what are your revenues? And my answer to that, how much you earn, 15 years ago was, not as much, more than what you think and less than what I expect. Right? And Samir ended up giving the same answer to the customer when he asked him, what are your revenues as Icertis, So it was a feeling of deja vu. So I think nowadays, things have changed. I don't think the odds are as stacked today against entrepreneurs. It's a lot more expected. Failures happen, and people are okay with that. Family pressures are not that much. My parents, when they thought I got a job, first of all, when I came back from doing my masters, and we were, actually lower middle class. We were not even a middle class family. When I came back from the US, and the only way I could go to the US because I had a scholarship. Otherwise, I would never have afforded it. But when I came back from the US, my mom said, hey, now you can get a great job. Fantastic, right? And, and then she said, yeah, wow, fantastic. It was an autonomous but still government undertaking. So government job, awesome, nothing like it. So you're done for 25 years, right? I don't have to worry about you at all. You can retire there. And then when I did this 2-week kind of decision when I left TiE, and I'd recently been promoted, I remember, right? And my mom said, are you crazy? And I said, yes. I said, I know you are, so you do whatever you want. So I was lucky, she at least said that, and I quit. But nowadays it's not that, it's not that much of an issue. I think it's more individual, I think people, in Indian culture, and I've got a lot of flack from people saying, hey, you kind of compare Indian and US culture, people are the same everywhere in the world. I don't think so. Indian culture kind of doesn't allow you to be a failure or to fail. Right? We're brought up with that, right from your school, your marks, your rank in school, everything is kind of geared towards, hey, you have to be successful. And that means you're already scared a little bit in your mind. And I think that drives it, but I think the pressures are now considerably reduced. And the fields have opened up. So I think it's very conducive today, if you ask me, to be on your own.